I'm not a politician, so I don't have to pretend that the concerns of Generation Z are legitimate. I understand that if you're a politician,
the concerns of Gen Z are not legitimate. Dude, and Ben Shapiro, do you wonder why your views are falling? Like, your audience is just not watching anymore. And this is part of the reason why. I mean, we know the other reasons why, but him just shitting on Gen Z, your concerns are not legitimate. All right, let's listen to why not.
then you have to placate people when they emotionally explain to you why their life is so difficult. Sometimes people do have difficult lives. People have real challenges in the world.
Sometimes.
But when I hear from Generation Z that the American dream is dead to them, all I can think of as a generation, not individually, as an entire generation, is you have got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. I've read more pieces over the course of the last couple of years about how Generation Z has it tougher than any generation in modern history, and thought to myself, I'm just going to vomit. I mean, really, I'm just going to vomit. You have lived.
I'm gonna vomit. I'm a millionaire. I can afford housing, and I can afford daycare, and I can afford everything that I can possibly dream of because I'm funded by billionaires. But you can't afford housing, and that makes me vomit that you are upset by that.
This guy's a fucking lunatic.
I mean, really, I'm just going to vomit. You have lived through 0 serious wars that America has had to undergo. 0.
Wait, what? What does that even mean? Ben, have you been to war? Like, what is he talking about? There's no draft. There hasn't been a draft since Vietnam. What is his point? Have we had a war in the United States recently that I was unaware of? Like, what is his point? You haven't lived through a major US war, so there's no struggle here? What? What a brain dead take.
Bro, you've lived through 0 serious terrorist attacks. You have lived in the most prosperous time in...
Again, did you die on 9/11, Ben? Like, what? What? I mean, what does living through a terrorist attack have to do with being able to afford a home? Being able to afford childcare, being able to afford healthcare. What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything with the systemic issues that Gen Z and millennials and Gen X face? What the hell is he talking about?
You have lived in the most prosperous time in human history, in the healthiest time in human history.
The healthiest? What the fuck is he talking about? Like, rates of colon cancer among young people are going up. Like, obesity's the highest it's ever been. The healthy, like, what is he talking about? And the most prosperous, yeah, except, there are countries that have really high GDP per capita, but the average person does not have a high standard of living. Like, you realize that a country can have a high GDP and the average person does not get to see that or feel that or experience that. It's the most prosperous time for ultra wealthy people. When Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, their wealth has like tripled over the last 5 years. Yeah, they're doing great. They're doing great. The average person can't afford a home. So it doesn't matter that it's the most prosperous overall in total when the average person can't fucking afford to live. Or barely can afford to live. Or has to go into debt to live. God, dude, he's so out of touch, it's insane.
And because your rent is too high in New York City, while you concomitantly hold some sort of nonprofit job in New York City. And this is the thing that...
What? Concomitantly? Dude, come on. You don't need to use that word. When you have high rent and you also work at a nonprofit job, let's let's economize our words. But no, it's not just people working nonprofit jobs. It's everybody who isn't wealthy in New York. Good Lord, dude. I'm not struggling. I'm a millionaire funded by oil billionaires. And so therefore your concerns are not legitimate. Because I'm making up some person who works at a nonprofit job in New York or whatever, because that's everybody.
I don't mean everybody in Generation Z. Again, I'll say it for the third time here. There are
You're whining when you are upset that you can't afford rent or your mortgage.
many people who are suffering, who have disease, who have health problems, who have been dealt a rough hand by life. That is not what I'm talking about. The generational complaint that somehow Generation Z has it worse than the millennials or Gen X or the boomers or the greatest generation ignores literally all of America.
Who is he referring to? Who in Gen Z is saying I have it worse than the greatest generation? Yeah, I have it worse than people who were alive during the Great Depression. Who the fuck is saying that? What is he talking about? Oh, you can't struggle and be upset by that because you didn't have it as bad as those who were living during the Great Depression. Okay, dude. Is this how you talk to your wife? If your wife comes to you with a problem, she's upset by something, and you're like, listen, do you know what it was like to storm the beaches of Normandy? You don't have it that bad, so shut the hell up. Good Lord.
But if you're a politician, you can make bank by pretending that these people have concerns that are legitimate and they're not just being ungrateful and bratty. And again, Mamdani, for these folks, is a sort of...
Dude, Benny boy. Wages have not kept up with productivity since the early 1980s, late 1970s. It's no wonder why we can't afford housing. And when housing costs have increased insane percentages, along with our wages not keeping up with productivity, of course we're not going to be able to afford those things. We're not going to be able to afford housing. We're not going to be able to afford college tuition. We're going to have to go into debt and be debt slaves just to get an education. Or just to get, a surgery that we need. God, this guy is a lunatic.
The avatar, right? The thing that you look at as a bug. He has no resume. He grew up absolutely wealthy, like loaded, and currently is taking advantage of a rent-controlled apartment.
Oh no, he's wealthy, so he can't advocate on behalf of the working class. Zoran, you are a class traitor, according to Ben. Which, I think is a good thing. God forbid a moderately wealthy person advocate and propose policies that will benefit the working class. I can't believe it. I'm sickened.
In New York City, he is currently living in a rent-stabilized apartment where the rent is $2,500 a month. The market rate would be $8,000 per month. He earns $147,000 a year and is campaigning on housing affordability in New York City. You might think to yourself, that's crazy. How are all of these socialists in New York City supporting somebody who's so clearly a hypocrite? That misses the point.
How is he a hypocrite? You do realize $8,000? I don't know if you could afford that on $147K. Like, I don't know what his other expenses are. New York is an expensive city to live in. It's not just the rent that's expensive. It's everything. Like $147,000, like if you made that in Texas, oh man, you'd be killing it. But in New York, that's like, it's a moderately high salary, but it's not insane. God forbid you be able to find an apartment for $2,500 when the market rate's $8,000. I'm disgusted by that.
America look to their politicians as aspirational figures. I think a lot of people who love President Trump look to him as an aspirational figure, somebody who's very wealthy and very powerful, somebody who's made more of himself than otherwise he might have had at the beginning. Yes, he grew up rich, but
Yeah, except he would have made more money if he took all of his inheritance and put it into the S&P and just let it sit. He actually did worse than he otherwise would have by going bankrupt 4 times, by starting a bunch of businesses that were complete failures. The only thing that succeeded was his dad's business that he inherited. And he kind of fucked that up too, when he could have just made more money in the stock market.
he made himself into a brand name available.
Not only that, I forgot to mention, I don't think Trump is an aspirational figure for a lot of MAGA people now when he refuses to release the Epstein files. Because we all know, and despite what Ghislaine Maxwell has lied about, he is in those files and he is likely a perpetrator. He was friends with the most famous pedophile for 10 years. Best friends. Who he wrote creepy ass letters to. I don't aspire to be like that.
All across the world for literally decades, and then president of the United States twice. And so that's an aspirational thing. But what if the Gen Z aspiration is to be a career loser who lives off of his parents' income until he gets some sort of cush government job living in a rent-stabilized apartment? What if that...
Dude, Trump is the same thing but worse. At least Zoran Mamdani is advocating on behalf of the working class and proposing real solutions to the issues that face them. And Trump is like, I'm just going to cut taxes for wealthy people and then impose tariffs that the working class has to end up paying. Awesome. Yeah, he's great. He's awesome.
Is the actual aspiration. What if people look up to Zoran Mamdani not because he is a loser, not in spite of the fact that he is a loser, but because he is kind of a loser? And this is, I think, the theory of...
Says a millionaire who screams into a camera every day and is funded by oil billionaires. Ben, you are also a loser. You worked at a law firm for 10 months. That's it. That's all. That's the only real work you've ever done, was work at a law firm for 10 months, not even a whole year. All right, guys, there you have it. Ben Shapiro clearly has disdain for Gen Z workers and really the working class as a whole. None of your concerns are legitimate, according to him, because if you work in the nonprofit sector, you don't deserve to have affordable housing. And despite criticizing Mamdani for not ever having a real job, he himself has only had a real job for 10 months. Donald Trump also inherited all of his money, all of his wealth, and has repeatedly failed at other business ventures other than his real estate business, which, again, inherited. But this is no surprise. Ben Shapiro is a mouthpiece for the capitalist class, him being funded by billionaires himself. Ben Shapiro, who is a millionaire, doesn't have any of these issues. He can afford anything he wants in his life. Ben Shapiro has zero empathy for the working class and should go fuck himself.